Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I have, once again, a packed show for you. First, it's time to talk about Windows 11. It is here. So CNET's own Dan Ackerman joins us to give us the initial review now that the system is here. What's missing, what's not, and everything in between. Then Lorenzo Franceschi-Bicchierai joins us from Vice to talk about that huge TWiT leak. There's a lot of information that has been leaked, and we want to talk about kind of the impact there. Then our stories of the week. First, I talk about Paddle offering in-app purchases on iOS as a result of the recent Epic Games versus Apple court case. And then we end the show with some therapy, in particular, backup therapy. So stay tuned for Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 204, recorded Thursday, October 7th, 2021.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Barracuda. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack, costing companies millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now. Go to barracuda.com/TNW.
And by userway.org. Userway ensures your website is accessible, ADA compliant, and helps your business avoid accessibility-related lawsuits. The perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also the law. Go to userway.org/twit for 30% off Userway's AI-powered accessibility solution.
And by checkout.com. Modern businesses need flexible payment systems that can help them adapt to change, grow, and scale fast. Checkout.com is a leading cloud-based global payment solutions provider. Request a free, no-commitment demo at checkout.com/TNW. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I'm the other one, Jason Howell. Good to see you, Mikah. I hope by the end of this episode, I can work through some of these feelings because I've got stuff to talk about later. It's totally on my mind, but we got a lot of really great news to get to before we get there.
Yes, we do. Up first, Microsoft earlier this week released Windows 11. We've heard about Windows 11 for quite some time. We got previews of how it was going to look. Some of us installed it on the Windows machines we have to play around with it. And if you are a subscriber of Windows Weekly here on the TWiT network, you probably saw a lot there as well. But it is finally time for everybody to get a taste of Windows 11. And joining us today to talk about his Windows 11 review is CNET's own Dan Ackerman. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Hey, guys. Good to see you. And good to see you, my old colleague, Jason.
That's right, Dan. Good to see you, man. I love the beard.
It's my COVID thing, and I'm just sticking with it. And I feel like I'm just going to own it now.
Yeah, you wear it well.
So let's get into Windows 11. This operating system obviously is the next iteration of Windows. I think a lot of people were very happy with Windows 10. And so when Windows 11 came along, it was kind of a sort of, what is it about Windows 11 that makes it different from Windows 10? What is it that would kind of draw people into upgrading? I like what the headline for your piece, Microsoft's OS upgrade is subtle, but we like that. Tell me more about this subtle upgrade.
I'll be honest. That's some headline writer wrote, but I identify with it. I understand it. I think a lot of it probably came down to somebody at Microsoft sitting around going, how do we get people to buy new computers? I know, we'll just pretend we need a whole new operating system, and that will spur this, round of replacement. The thing about operating, so I went back and looked at old OS reviews I had written going back to like Windows 8.1. Then we went through, 10 and everything else. I think the thing that you really want to look for is the more you notice an operating system, kind of like cinematography, the worse it is. You really want it to disappear into the background. And it almost as if you're talking about it too much and noticing it too much, then it's not really doing its job, which is to get out of your way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that I think is kind of the important thing here. There are these subtle upgrades that have been made, these subtle changes that have been made to sort of polish what was already a pretty strong platform. So, what are as you said, it's kind of about selling machines for sure, but for people who already have their machine who can upgrade to Windows 11, what are some of kind of the standout features that you've seen in the operating system?
It's a small sort of hodgepodge of little helps and upgrades. The biggest thing, I think the big game changer is the ability to easily run Android apps from right within Windows. You can do that already. You can use BlueStacks. You can use all kinds of other emulators, but it's not something that Windows machines have been able to do easily in the way that a Chromebook can. And that's really one of the great reasons why Chromebooks have become so much more universally useful in the last couple of years, because $300, $500, you can do all the Chrome OS stuff, but you've also got the Google Play Store and its own little playground, and you can install, TikTok or Instagram or play mobile games, Android games on it. The problem is, of course, that feature did not launch alongside Windows 11. It doesn't even have a date, really. And that's kind of the biggest letdown, that the one thing that really was kind of a game changer isn't there. Instead, it's easier to snap windows into place in different structures on your pick, a little one here and this guy here and this guy here, and have them all pop back up. Okay. Multiple desktops, a little bit easier. That's actually pretty handy if you have all your work windows in one desktop and all your, personal social media ones in another, and game stuff in another. That's one of the few things I think that it's actually easier now to do in Windows 11 than on a Mac. And that's not something you're going to say very often. But I think that the real reason, the first thing everyone notices is that taskbar went from the, left side to the middle. The main reason they did that, I think, is so you'd notice something was different. But otherwise you're like, okay, what's the, but I moved it back to the left, just because that's where taskbar and the start menu and everything belong, on the left. But after a couple of days, I went back to the middle. I was like, you guys sold me on the middle. I couldn't go back. Once you go, to the next step in your evolution, you can't go back.
Right. So how did you move it over to the left side? Is that an option in Windows 11?
I think it's you right click on it, you go to taskbar settings, and I think you can align left or align center. You can't align right. But I was a hard lefter. I was like, move it to the middle. That's just I thought that's just to show people it's something new. That's nonsense. Left. After using it in the middle originally, for the first couple of days or weeks, or on some other systems. But then it was like that middle just got into me. It got under my skin, and I had to go back. I had to run back to the middle aligned taskbar.
Wow. So yes, you've made the jump. You've stuck with the modern look and feel. Some of the other, so again, one of the big features that you talked about is the sort of workspaces setup that helps you to kind of set up a custom workspace for your home, a custom workspace for your office. Does it feel like Microsoft is delivering on the sort of branding around Windows 11, which was that this is an operating system meant for our sort of hybrid work life, where some of us are working from home, some of us are working in the office, and that we can sort of context switch? Do you think that Windows 11 lives up to that hype that they've tried to create there?
That is a really good contextual reading of it. Some of these features really do work well with the concept that I've got my laptop, but I'm working at home, so it's kind of my home machine and it's kind of my work machine. That's one of the reasons why I don't think, let's say, the snapping windows to area is all that important, because if you're on your laptop, how many windows are you going to have open at once? Usually you're looking at one thing and then you flip to another. But the multiple desktops, that makes a lot of sense in that context. And I think what Windows 11 smartly does, and it's subtle, it's not like rocket science, but they put a lot of these things right in the taskbar. So if you want the different desktops, you don't have to search for it. It's right there. If you want some other, you just go right there. They have the Microsoft Teams thing. They call it chat, but you click on the little chat icon that's preloaded there. It takes you to Microsoft Teams. Now, I said, maybe I'm completely, out of the loop, but I said the only time anyone's ever invited me to a Microsoft Teams meeting is if they work at Microsoft and they have to use it because
yes,
it's for work.
Yes.
But other people have now told me, mostly in YouTube comments, which I try never to read, but I broke down and read a few, said, what are you talking about? We use Teams all the time. So maybe there's this whole culture of people who love Microsoft Teams that I have never encountered. I have been coastal elited out of understanding the appeal of Microsoft Teams, but maybe I'm wrong.
Coastal yeeted is what the kids are saying. This is interesting because I have, friends who work in sort of like Salesforce-y type companies, and they are all Microsoft Teams people. And so they, are always talking about, I'm over here going, oh yeah, I had my work meeting on Google Meet, and I had my call on Zoom, and they're like, what? We use Teams for everything. So you definitely understand where those comments are coming from, because I too was kind of confused about having that. I've got a Surface Laptop 3, I think is what it is, that I installed Windows 11 on to give it a go. And that was one of the things in the taskbar I thought, I don't really need this. Now, as you said, Android is not yet available the Android App Store is not yet available as a feature that I know a lot of folks are, very much looking forward to. But that makes me wonder, what are some other features that Microsoft has announced for Windows 11 that aren't coming in the first iteration of Windows 11, the one that folks are downloading right now in this kind of rollout?
The other big one that jumps out to me is as part of the upgrades to the Windows App Store, which again has always been frankly fairly terrible, but has gotten slightly less terrible over time. They said, we're going to open up this app store and let you download other people's browsers and let you download other software sales sites like Steam or the Epic Games, things that have their own ecosystems. So as of the last time I checked a couple of days ago, you could get the Opera browser. I think they had said they will eventually have the Epic Game Store, but that's about as far as they've gone. I think once you get the ability to get these apps fairly easily through that built-in app store, especially if it's things like Steam or GOG or anything that has like its own sub app store built in and frankly is game based, you'll see a lot more people use that. To be fair to Microsoft, Apple also has a macOS app store that I find pretty useless.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally understandable. So we don't have too much more time with you. I did want to talk briefly about Microsoft's new Surface devices, of one of which is the Surface Pro 8. And you've written a review over on CNET that, again, I know not your headline, but that talks about kind of Windows 11 and Surface Pro 8 working well together, which makes sense given what you said earlier about how Windows 11 was kind of a way to sell these new machines. So can you tell us about your experience with Surface Pro 8 and in particular how it worked with Windows 11?
That's why I think the Surface series, especially since around Surface Pro 3, has really worked out well. And people generally like these devices, which is not something you often hear about, let's say, Windows tablets, is because we've got the case where Microsoft is designing the operating system and the hardware. That's kind of what Apple does, where they're able to control the entire ecosystem. Lately, but not the chips. Apple makes the chips now. Microsoft did that with the Surface Pro X, where they kind of co-designed the chip that's in that. So it's not 100% yet, but I think that's why the feel is so tight on those Surface products. And the Pro 8, it's really nice. I actually used it as like my main laptop for like a week, and I didn't feel like I was really losing out on a lot. I found it very portable. It didn't quite sell itself as a tablet only, like when you're sitting in bed flipping through the news, you're going to watch something on Netflix. It's a little heavy and clunky for that. But for going out to coffee shops and outdoor little dining establishments here in New York, where everybody sits around and works because they can't really work inside, I thought the Surface Pro 8 worked great, and I really like the Surface Laptop Studio, which is the kind of hybrid, kind of like the Surface Studio desktop, kind of like the Surface laptop, a little bit of game graphics power in there. I feel like they have a good lineup this time that really hits on all the levels.
Okay. It's interesting that the siren decided to stop right after you stopped speaking.
It's still going.
Okay. It was probably a ducking feature.
That's the emergency here somewhere.
That was so intense. It was like I was hanging on to every word as you were talking. It was getting more and more intense.
I live in a very fire-prone neighborhood.
Gotcha. Well, my last question for you is just any last thoughts, any final thoughts, I should say, that you have about Windows 11 or Microsoft's new round of Surface products that you want to let our listeners know about?
So we always tell people in general, when there's a new OS or an OS upgrade, you don't need to be the first guy in the block to get it. Let it roll around for a little bit, let it get tested, let people find the bugs. That said, Windows 11 was so widely distributed and so many people have been using it. My final advice to people has been, if you want to download it right away, it's probably fine. If you want to wait a while, that's fine too. Don't feel pressure either way. Just follow your heart.
Follow your heart. That's a great way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. If folks want to follow you online, where can they go to do so?
Hey, just hit me up on @Dan_Ackerman on Twitter. That's the best way. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
All right. Up next, more about that Twitch hack that you probably heard about. But before we head there, I want to tell you that this week's episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Barracuda. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack, and they are taking such a toll on organizations that the U.S. government is now classifying them as terrorism. According to the 2021 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, ransomware has more than doubled year over year. In its most recent Threat Spotlight research blog post, Barracuda identified and analyzed 121 ransomware incidents from August 2020 to July 2021, seeing a 64% increase in attacks year over year. Look, you've seen the news. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says don't pay the ransom. Instead, protect yourself and your company before a ransomware attack occurs. 1. Attacks start with an innocent-looking email trying to trick people into revealing their usernames and passwords. You can train your teams to recognize an attack and deploy anti-phishing technology. 2. Secure your web applications. Those are file sharing services, web forms, and e-commerce sites that often have weak points the hackers are looking for. Once they're in your applications, they go after your business data. So protect your applications and they can't get onto your network. And 3, back up your data. Today's backup solutions make it simple and fast to protect archives and backup or restore an entire server or individual file. You can quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now before they strike. Just go to barracuda.com/TNW. That's barracuda.com/TNW. barracuda.com/TNW. Thanks so much to Barracuda for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All righty, Jason, what have you got for us?
All right, another week, another leak. This time it's Twitch in the crosshairs, and this one actually sounds pretty revealing. Joining us to talk through the details is Lorenzo Franceschi-Bicchierai from Vice's Motherboard. Welcome back to the show, Lorenzo.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to see you again. Great to have you on, especially for this story. The story, it's fascinating, the scope of this. At the same time, we're all kind of getting numb to this sort of thing happening on a daily, a weekly basis. But this one feels a little bit more significant. We'll start with the leak itself. Initially, this was posted on 4chan. There was the note, Jeff Bezos paid $970 million for this. We're giving it away for free. What exactly are they giving away for free here? What is found inside of this?
Yeah, so yesterday, an unknown group or individual hacker released a torrent file that was around 125 or 135 gigabytes that contained all sorts of things like source code for Twitch apps, internal spreadsheets that detail the earnings of virtually all Twitch users or streamers rather. We don't know if that's really all of them, but we found ourselves, meaning a Twitch channel that we use here at Vice, which is not definitely not one of the biggest in the platform. So potentially this is this is financial data that belongs to all Twitch streamers. So, pretty sensitive, especially for the streamers themselves rather than the company.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you wrote about. Let's maybe take a look at each kind of side of this, because it really is multi-pronged. You've got the source code and the sensitive information that runs Twitch behind the scenes, essentially, and then you've got the data that's related to the people who are streaming on the platform. But let's start with Twitch itself. How critical, how sensitive is this leaked source code data? From what we understand, is there a direct threat to Twitch from a security standpoint? What exactly does that entail?
So as far as we've seen in the leaked data, which, by the way, I think I forgot to mention this, the hacker advertised this as part one.
Yes.
I wouldn't take the hacker's words necessarily at face value, but if that's true, that means that they have more, which they may release or they may sell or who knows what. So, it's potentially the damage is bigger than what we know so far. So to answer your question in terms of, the security risks right now for Twitch, my guess is that they are limited in the sense that, they know that this has happened because obviously they've seen the 4chan post. They're working on it. They say that they're investigating the incident. So I think it's unlikely that the hackers are still in there. That being said, given the fact that we don't know if this is all the data, there may be some risk. We don't know if, let's say some private development keys or, Twitch employee passwords were part of the hack. So I guess the answer is we don't know. But so far, in terms of what we've seen, the security risk for Twitch itself is low.
Okay, for Twitch itself is low. And they've actually come out with a statement later last night. They came out with an initial statement that was, to the tune of yes, something happened. And then last night had a little bit more to share. What is the extent of what they do know about this? What are they sharing about that?
Well, they haven't shared that much, but I think there's 3 lines in that statement that you're showing right now that are very important. Twitch said, and I quote, "We have learned that some data was exposed to the internet due to an error in a Twitch server configuration change that was subsequently accessed by a malicious third party." So this is pretty carefully worded, but the way I understand this is that somehow a developer or a group of developers made a little configuration mistake that made a server accessible to anyone on the internet, where that server was not supposed to be. So I imagine that was obviously it was a sensitive server given the data that was leaked, and it was supposed to be only accessible to Twitch employees. But this configuration mistake may have exposed it to the whole internet. So this tells me 2 things. One, that the hack was probably not that sophisticated, meaning, the hackers just were able to find the server and the door was open.
Right.
And, which still is, that's still embarrassing for Twitch. But perhaps that also suggests that the damage is not that big, because if it was just this one server, Twitch presumably knows what was in that server and has, shut down access and can now figure out how to deal with its probably angry streamers.
Right. Well, and you also wrote that you spoke with a former employee of Twitch who understands the back end, and basically, made the comment that the source code for Twitch is developed in a way to limit kind of its impact of its secrets and that sort of stuff, to kind of keep a lot of the stuff that would be very damaging out of the source code. So for whatever that's worth. Didn't seem like the source was all too concerned about the potential damage to the company. Is that right?
Yeah. What he said was that in terms of, as you said, secrets, there's not going to be huge secrets in terms of, passwords or keys, secret keys, stuff like that in the source code. But, I guess what he said is that it's probably damaging in terms of IP, intellectual property. You can imagine that maybe Twitch competitors are pouring through the source code to learn some tricks that they may or may not know already.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, there's the other side, which you've alluded to a couple of times now, is the impact on streamers. I mean, this is revenue data. This is information that a lot of people who are working in very public-facing, they've got a lot of followers, a lot of people that have probably wondered, they're fans, but they've also probably wondered, like, well, how much does a popular streamer on Twitch make? Well, apparently this data is accurate. You reported that even internally at Vice, you guys kind of, were able to take a look at your own Twitch channel and see how that compared with what was printed out here. How accurate is this? Is this a pretty up-to-date collection of information and data around revenue information?
Yes, correct. One of the spreadsheets that we saw that was leaked was dated up to June or July of this year. So, pretty recent. And that allowed us to, look ourselves up in the data. And when I say we, I mean Waypoint, which is our games channel. They have a pretty popular Twitch channel. So we just looked them up. We compared the data on our end in terms of revenue. And yeah, we saw that it was accurate. Other streamers on Twitter also said that they found themselves and saw that that the data there was accurate. They're not very happy about it because this is private data. They don't advertise how much money they make. Twitch doesn't advertise how much money they make. Luckily, so far, it doesn't seem that the leak includes even more sensitive stuff like, I don't know, home addresses, banking information, PayPal, or whatever Twitch uses to pay the streamers. If that had been exposed, or if that was exposed, that would obviously raise a lot of questions in terms of doxing risks, harassment risks, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, man. And I can only imagine, like you talked just a few minutes ago about this being the first part that signals more to come, whether that's actually going to happen or not. One could imagine that a second wave of information could include this information. And then what does that mean for these streamers and their lives if all of this information is out there? I mean, it changes things significantly, not only for them, but also for just the stability and of Twitch to be a trustworthy place for these people to run their businesses. And there's no, at this point, I have to imagine that Twitch is working on understanding what else was potentially garnered from this leak to know whether that information could be used in a follow-up dump. Is there any indication as far as that's concerned, or at this point it's still pretty quiet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's still early. I think the way that Twitch responded to this indicates to me that they were not aware of this exposure or this hack, which, as I said, may not really be a hack if the server was exposed. So, in the statement that you showed earlier, it says that our teams are working with urgency to investigate the incident. So it doesn't seem like they were aware of it. So it's only been like roughly 24 hours. They're probably trying to figure out, what data was in that server, how many people access it, because, if it was completely open, it's possible that it wasn't just this person or this group that leaked it to 4chan. It could have been more people. I guess they're also trying to figure out if there were other servers with the same misconfiguration. And yeah, they must be working 24/7, all day to figure out exactly what kind of data was exposed. Because as we said, if we're talking about credit card data or even banking information, because, Twitch pays these streamers. So somewhere they have to store this kind of information. That would be really bad. We're talking about they would have to notify thousands of people, tell them to block their credit cards, banking accounts, whoever, whatever else. And they've already taken some steps. They have reset all streaming keys, which are sort of the private, kind of like a replacement for a password that streamers use to turn on their streams and broadcast. And it's not clear that those keys were exposed, but I think the company was like, must have thought, let's just do this proactively. We never know. This way they prevented the hackers from impersonating streamers and, going live with their accounts.
Yeah, minor inconvenience to, for major impact potentially if they didn't do that, and a whole wave of that stuff started happening. And then for people who have just general Twitch accounts, maybe people who aren't necessarily streamers, but who have accounts that they use to kind of manage their viewing and everything, is there anything that just the everyday Twitch users should be doing? I know I went in there yesterday and I changed my password just to be on the safe side, but is that the recommendation at this point primarily?
Yeah, yesterday we did recommend that in our story. Today, or rather late last night, Twitch said that they have no indication that login credentials were exposed. So, I feel like at this point, given that statement, it's probably not urgent to change your password, but it doesn't hurt. We don't know how bad this was. And, if you use a password manager, it's a relatively painless experience to just change the password.
Right.
I haven't done it personally, but I feel like it's never a bad idea when something like this happens.
Yeah, good habit to get into nonetheless, especially like you said, if you have a password manager, it's really not that difficult. It takes like 60 seconds and you're done. So good stuff. Lorenzo Franceschi-Bicchierai, really appreciate you hopping on with us today. Obviously, anyone who wants to follow your work can go to Vice's Motherboard. You are always channeling out high quality articles and everything. I love your writing. So keep doing what you do. If people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Lorenzo FB, like my initials.
Awesome. Lorenzo, thank you again for hopping on today. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jason. Good to see you.
All right. Good to see you too. All right. Up next, we've got Mikah's story of the week, all about alternative app payment systems on iOS in particular, and especially in the shadow of the Epic versus Apple trial that completed not too long ago. We're starting to see some movement there. We're going to talk about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by userway.org. Userway is awesome. We had a kind of an initial call with Userway and got a little bit more familiar with what they're doing. And it's so good because we talk about accessibility on this network a lot. And we're always trying to give accessibility even more exposure because it really is that important. And that's what Userway is all about. It's amazing. Has a vision that we can all connect with. Every website, without exception, needs to be accessible because, well, it's a public entity, and because it's the right thing to do, of course. It's federal ADA law that mandates equal access to services for all Americans, which means that you could be liable if your website doesn't meet those ADA laws for accessibility. And Userway has just an incredible AI-powered solution that enforces the hundreds of WCAG guidelines with just one line and a single line of JavaScript. And with that, Userway can achieve more than an entire team of developers. So if you have a site and you've been meaning to do this, this is a really great, simple way to do it. Userway's AI and machine learning solutions power accessibility for over 1 million websites, trusted by Coca-Cola, Disney, eBay, FedEx, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Many other leading brands in there as well. And now Userway is making its best-in-class enterprise-level accessibility tools available to small and medium-sized businesses. When you scale, you're going to need Userway. An accessible and compliant website isn't only the right thing to do, it also makes business sense because the Achilles heel for websites can be things like registration forms, navigation menus, shopping carts, and often those things are not accessible. So you're leaving out millions of people who want to purchase your products and they won't be able to do it. Well, they will when you use Userway. It's gonna button a lot of that stuff up for you. For years, Userway has been on the cutting edge, creating innovative accessibility technologies that really push the envelope of what's possible with AI, with machine learning, computer vision. UserWay's AI automatically fixes violations at the code level. And it just does it automatically for you. You don't have to get in there and muck around with the code at all. It's done automatically. Here are just a few things that UserWay does for you. It auto-generates image alts, so it's writing those image descriptions for you. It remediates complex nav menus and ensures that all pop-ups are accessible. It fixes vague link violations, fixes any broken links that you might have, ensures your websites make use of accessible colors. That's a really easy one to get wrong, and you just wouldn't know that it's not an accessible color. Well, UserWay is going to make it possible for you while still retaining adherence to your brand. Gives you a detailed report of all the violations that were fixed on your website, so you know exactly what's happening behind the scenes. UserWay is platform agnostic as well, so WordPress, Shopify, Wix, doesn't matter. UserWay is cost effective, it's easy to add, and the same goes for AEM, Sitecore, SharePoint. UserWay integrates seamlessly with all of it. Let UserWay help your business meet its compliance goals and improve the experience for your users, and you can check out their free scanning tool to see if your website is ADA compliant. That's awesome. Check it for free, right? Scan your site, see what it says, and then you'll know that UserWay can help. The voice of Siri, who's actually considered the world's most popular voice assistant, you might have heard of Siri, has a message about UserWay.
UserWay is trusted by more than 1 million websites and 60 million users with disabilities. Visit userway.org to learn how one line of code can make your website accessible.
I'm not used to hearing that voice from a person. I'm used to hearing that voice from a device. Thank you, Siri. UserWay can make any website fully accessible and ADA compliant. With UserWay, everyone who visits your site can browse seamlessly and customize it to fit their needs. It's also a perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. Go to userway.org/twit and get 30% off UserWay's AI-powered accessibility solution. UserWay is making the internet accessible for everyone. And that's awesome. Visit userway.org/twit today, and we thank UserWay for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, Mikah, your story of the week begins now. What you got?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one. So Apple and Epic Games have been in a battle for quite some time. We've had a lot of people on the show to talk about it, but a quick, brief sort of re-explanation of the situation is that Epic Games, who makes Fortnite and some other different games, distributes them and whatnot, tried to essentially launch its own in-app payment system on iOS, which is not allowed. The App Store rules and guidelines did not allow that. So Apple pulled the app and, sort of blocked their account from publishing stuff. And for the longest time, Epic Games has not been in the App Store. And there have been lawsuits now kind of trying to get through this whole situation of, is it okay for Apple to block third parties from being able to have their own app stores or in-app purchases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Recently, a judge came to the decision that Apple couldn't prevent apps from giving links to alternative means of paying for things in an app. And it gets complicated because it's very specific wording and it's very specific situations. And so, the guideline is that Apple can continue to provide its in-app payment, in-app purchase system, but it also needs to make it so that developers who want to can link to an external way of allowing someone to pay for something within the app. However, with that comes a whole bunch of caveats, including the fact that, there may be some questions that the company has about how exactly that needs to be implemented or not implemented. They gave Apple, the judge gave Apple 90 days from September 10th, 90 days after September 10th. Before those 90 days were up, Apple needed to sort of correct for this. Since then, Paddle, a company that many of you who've purchased Mac software will probably be familiar with. It's a great payment platform that lets you, buy subscriptions to apps or just buy apps outright. In particular for the Mac, they might do Windows apps as well, but I'm just familiar with them from buying things for the Mac. And Paddle said, "Hey, we're going to offer an in-app purchasing system for iOS that will allow developers to offer an external method for paying for in-app purchases." So let's talk about the benefits of this before we get into some of the nitty-gritty here. Apple, of course, depending on how large your company is that's making an app, how many downloads it has, et cetera, Apple charges between 15 and 30% for, it's either 15 or 30, I shouldn't say between. It's either 15% or 30%, depending on the size of your company, for transactions. That's whether they're below $10, above $10, anywhere in between. Paddle is going to charge 10% for transactions below $10, 5% plus 50 cents for transactions $10 and above. Paddle also goes on to say that some of the other things you get are access to the customer's email so that you and the customer can have direct interactions. Mostly that's so that developers can send you emails letting you know about the latest version and marketing and yada, yada, yada. Right now, the only way to get a refund for an app in the App Store is to actually go via Apple's method and request a refund. And Apple is in charge of deciding whether you get that refund. Anytime I've had to do a refund, going through the process, every time save for one, I was able to get a refund for the app. And I still to this day don't know why I didn't get a refund for the one app and I don't do it a whole bunch, but maybe I've done it 4 times in the history of me being on the App Store. And one time they rejected me. I filed an appeal because it didn't make sense. And I still got rejected for getting my refund. So this can lead, some folks might not separate the two. They think that the developer is in charge of it. And so then it leads to poor reviews whenever the person's not able to get a refund. But really that's on Apple. And so Paddle is saying, hey, here, you're in charge of giving them a refund, so you can do that more often. They also talk about how there are more ways to offer pricing because Apple does have rules and regulations around that. More types of payment options, including Alipay and PayPal options, which Apple does have a PayPal integration, but it's not quite the same. And then coupons, which are a big thing that Apple has offer codes, and you can use them to a certain extent, but these coupons are more easier to use. So a lot of great reasons why, a lot of great benefits for using this third-party payment system in your app. But here's the problem. Again, 90 days after the date of the ruling. So the date of the ruling was September 10th. So 30 days from, and bear with me, we'll just say a month from that is October. A month from that is November. And a month from that is December. So at the earliest, if Apple wants to take that full 90 days, would be December 10th. And when it comes to companies that are in the midst of court cases and things like that, there are often appeals. There are often reasons why it might get delayed, all of this. So the safest bet that a company could make would be to say December 10th. And that is a really risky bet. And yet, Paddle says that this feature is set to launch on December 7th, 3 days before the final day that Apple has been given in the current iteration for making changes to its App Store. So already that feels kind of disingenuous. And then it's doubled by the fact that depending on who you talk to, the interpretation of the judge's ruling may suggest that this is not something that Apple is going to allow, nor does it have to allow in its current iteration. It's all very unclear. So for Paddle to come out and say that they're doing this in-app purchase, they're offering this in-app purchase system, to give it a date of December 10th and to say that, these are all the things that we're going to provide and it's going to be ready on this date, it feels a little like what Epic did when it put into its code the ability to then launch that in-app purchase system again, it's disingenuous. And in that way, I'm a little disappointed with Paddle because, as I said, I think Paddle is a fantastic payment platform for purchasing apps. And so I love what they do most of the time, but this doesn't feel appropriate. And if we go back to that, John Ashley, that Paddle page and scroll down, there's a section that says read the news on Epic Games versus Apple. It's almost at the bottom of the page. You will note that there are 3 articles here, one from the Financial Times, one from VentureBeat, and then one from Paddle itself, and no others. Lots of companies wrote about this. These 3 articles are most, not slanted is not the right word, but are most in support of Paddle's seeming interpretation of the in-app purchase system, as opposed to some others who've said, okay, but this doesn't change very much. This doesn't mean that Apple doesn't have to do this, that, or the other. And so it feels like we're cherry picking the news a little bit. And we are, in a way, trying to say that they're going to do a thing without knowing for sure that they can do a thing. And I'm just a little disappointed in Paddle for doing that. So developers can sign up now to be notified. At the top, Paddle just says coming soon, but December 10th was the quote, and it's unclear if that's going to end up being the date. At the top of the page too, I'll describe it for the people who are just listening to the show. There's a little video that shows how the in-app purchase system works. It's not technically an in-app purchase system. You are in an app and you can choose, to upgrade, and then it pops you out to Safari, where it will load a page from Paddle, where you can then use Apple Pay if you want to, use another payment system like PayPal or just paying with your card. And then after you go through with the purchase, it pops you back into the app and you have access to, in this case, 1 year of Yoga Club subscription. So here's the thing. I like the idea of developers and companies who make great apps getting more money from people purchasing their apps. I think that part is great. 15%, 30%, it is quite a bit of money that's being taken in. And so a reduction in fees is great. But I do have concerns. I trust Paddle because I've used Paddle for a long time and I know how it works. And I know that the company is protecting our privacy and our data. But what happens when we get some third-party in-app purchase systems that don't spend very much money on securing users' information? And what about scammy systems where it's an app that you think is the app that you want to get, you download it, it pops you out to a third-party payment system, and then that third-party payment system takes all of your money from your bank account that you've signed up through with by adding your card or adding your bank account information. That's where I get worried. And so I wonder what, if anything, Apple is going to do to sort of mitigate that. And then I wonder what companies are going to end up coming out kind of as the ones that get to have this system. From early comments and commentary on this, it seems like most people are saying, that's fine that they'll have a third-party system, but I'm still just going to use in-app purchase with Apple. But here's the issue. What we might end up seeing is what we've seen thus far, which is some apps will have an in-app purchase where you can subscribe to, a content provider. So let's say there's a place called Showflix, and Showflix has a monthly subscription service. And if you are in the app on your iPhone or iPad, you subscribe for $14.99 a month. But if you go to showflix.com, please don't go there because I don't know what's there. If you go to
be careful.
Showflix.show and they offer you the subscription. It's only $10 if you buy it online because there's no commission that Apple is taking off of the top of that. So a lot of times companies will charge you different amounts, or in some cases, I should say not a lot of the time, but in some cases, the companies will charge you different amounts depending on where you subscribe to the service because they want to reclaim that 30% or 15% commission. So how is this going to look in a future app store? Will these apps be allowed to say, use Apple's in-app purchase system and it costs you, $10 a month, or use this in-app purchase system where it costs you $8 a month, and then it pops you out to Paddle or some other third-party platform? I don't know. And so that part is still unclear. And I think that that's also why it is too early for any in-app purchase platform to be saying, hey, check us out. We're ready to do this. We're going to do it. And this is how we're going to do it. And we've already got a date that we're going to do it. That it seems too soon. So if you see this news, just sort of be mindful that it might not be happening. Now, my question, Jason, on Android, does Google have an in-app purchase system? And does Google allow third-party in-app purchases in apps on Android?
Yes, Google has Google has an in-app purchase system. It's just the same purchase system that you use when you go to their site. It's all done through Google. And to my knowledge, no, I don't believe that there is a third-party in-app payment solution inside of apps. I could be wrong there, but to my knowledge, there is not. I think anytime I've ever done in-app purchases on Android apps, it's always been routed through Google's payment system. Could be how I'm set up, but I honestly don't think that exists. I think it's kind of the same as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I was curious if it was going to be different there. So, yeah, I mean that's all there is to it right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see. Actually, I would be kind of surprised now that I think about it if we start to see some other folks also coming out with these payment systems so early on, because it is, I think, a little too early to make this call. I went ahead and subscribed, or there was an email form at the top. I went ahead and put in my email because I am curious. I want to know as soon as they are saying they're going to launch this, and then be able to hear what developers have to say. So I'll be keeping an eye on this, but yeah, I just think it's too soon for Paddle to be making this call. And in doing so, it just doesn't feel very, very mindful of the truth, so to speak.
Well, yeah, and some of the blowback that I'm reading about is related to this is the fact that Paddle denotes that they give sellers, they say, far greater access to data on each customer through the life cycle, allowing developers to better understand and optimize the user experience at every stage, which has to do something with like sharing email address, that sort of thing. I mean, it just in a broader scope, thinking about these third-party payment solutions and the possibility that like Apple does have its own rules around not sharing certain pieces of information, certain bits of data. When you're dealing with a third-party payment provider, they might have different rules than what Apple has done, and that might involve something as simple as like sharing your email address with their partners, whoever they happen to be. That could open you up to, who knows what other kind of contact down the line. You might not be okay with that. And that might be, these are just things to know about these third-party payment providers. They're all going to be, as more and more of them come out, they're all going to be kind of beholden to their own rules around this. And you probably want to know that going in if you're sensitive to that type of stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right, folks, up next, we've got Jason's story of the week. He mentioned earlier that there were some feels, and this next piece kind of touches on that. We're all hoping that it goes well. But first, before we do that, I want to tell you about checkout.com, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Look, tech shouldn't stifle innovation. Traditional payment systems are heavily layered, they're disconnected, and perceived as a cost center to the business. Modern businesses, they need flexible payment systems that can help them adapt to change, grow, and scale fast. And here at TWiT, we recently came across a company with tech that approaches payments through a radical new lens. Radical. And it's checkout.com. Checkout.com partnered with Oxford Economics and conducted an end-to-end analysis of the payments value chain for merchants. Get this, last year alone, false declines cost the UK, the US, French, and German markets $20.3 billion. $12.7 billion went to competitors, and $7.6 billion was entirely written off. The study found that merchants are not currently optimizing the consumer's significant willingness to pay for speed, for convenience, and for security online. The majority of merchants surveyed do not feel that their payments data is informing their business strategy or their innovation. And 56% of customers surveyed said they won't return to a site because they do not offer their preferred payment method. Most merchants spend more than 10% of their payments budget on fixing disputes, fraud, and outages. In fact, CEOs are more likely to overestimate the quality of data returned to them by payment providers, and CEOs tend to underestimate the extent to which disconnected payments are hindering growth. Most merchants focus on the per transaction costs of their payments, ignoring those back-end costs. Checkout.com is a leading cloud-based global payment solutions provider. Checkout's payment platform is purpose-built with performance, scalability, and speed in mind, so it's ideal for merchants looking to seamlessly integrate better payment solutions globally. Checkout.com offers improved acceptance globally and better and more actionable granular data. You get a flexible product structure that merchants can adapt to their needs, and it's combined with truly personal white glove service. It's why brands across the globe like Pizza Hut, Klarna, Revolut, and Samsung trust Checkout.com. In fact, one of the things that I like about Checkout.com is that they support Apple Pay and Google Pay, all those fun services that make it so easy to make a purchase. I often will be more likely to make a purchase if the site has Apple Pay versus if it does not. I see that and I go, oh man, you've made it so easy for me. I'm both annoyed with you because you know I'm going to make this purchase now, but also super happy because you made it so simple. And then the built-in security and privacy that comes with using a service like Apple Pay. So Checkout.com can help enable that for you. Very cool. Learn how to optimize your authorization rates with Checkout's free guide to better payments performance. This guide is full of expert advice and merchant insights to fast-track your path to unrivaled payments performance. Request a free, no-commitment demo at checkout.com/TNW. That's checkout.com/TNW for a free demo. Thanks so much to checkout.com for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Just head to checkout.com/TNW to learn more. All right, Jason, breathe in, breathe out, and tell us about your story of the week.
Okay. Last night was really great until a certain moment, and then it was really not great. So my story of the week is a cautionary tale. And yeah, so I wanted to take the story of the week time to kind of walk through this, because when it comes to backing up, it's really important to understand that, like, when something happens and you're beyond the point of no return, you realize in that moment that, like, dang it, if 5 minutes earlier I had done the thing that I keep meaning to do, I'd be in a different situation. So basically, I've talked on this show in the past about network attached storage. I set up a system, and basically, probably about 6 months ago, basically I've been, moving all of my photos, music albums, my music library and everything. I've been kind of doing it piece by piece onto the NAS as well as into the cloud. So I've got Google Photos gets every photo that I do. That's one point of backup. And then the NAS gets another, point of backup. I'm moving my photos into both places. Same with my music, YouTube Music and the NAS. It takes a little bit of managing, to go into both directions, but it's not the end of the world, and it's peace of mind, right? Well, I have had in my possession this drive right here, this external drive, which has served as a backup. And up until, I don't know, probably about 2 years ago, I had the contents of this drive on my computer and on this drive, like 2 different points. I figured, like, okay, well, if one goes away, I've still got the other. Why is this drive so important? Because it has basically all of this.
Whoa. This
entire box of audio cassettes, which I'm guessing is somewhere around 140 different cassettes. And that it's like, okay, so they're audio cassettes, who cares? What I realize is I'm an archivist at heart, and I've come to terms with this over the years. I've made a lot of stuff throughout my life, especially with music and creativity and everything. When I was younger, I was in all sorts of punk bands, and we'd go to people's houses and we'd record our sets. And, so that's some of the cassettes that are in here. We had 4-track recorders. So we were, recording all of these like side projects and everything and exchanging tapes. And I mean, this is literally my childhood right here, in my childhood and teen years and early 20s, all of this stuff. And this is just kind of scratching the surface. So I had, I don't know how many years ago, gone through the arduous process of digitizing all this stuff with a 4-track recorder that I had. It took forever. And, it was digitizing it and organizing it and all this stuff. And it was on this drive and then on my computer. I had to reset the computer. And, this is a drive that I haven't really touched a lot lately. So I was like, okay, well, I need to start the computer from scratch. I've got the backup here. I need to figure out where this data goes so it isn't just here. And then I promptly forgot to do that. Then 6 months ago, I got the NAS. And I thought, wow, okay, that's the perfect place for it. It's a lot of storage. I just need to do it. I kid you not. This weekend was the weekend that I was going to finally do this. And it's not even the hardest thing in the world. It was just going to be a stupid, simple dump of this drive over there. And I realized I'm only really talking about this giant box of tapes. There's plenty of other stuff there. Stuff that I remember, video projects, stuff that I don't. A lot of old, videotapes from holidays when we were younger that I told my parents I digitized for them, and I did, but it was on the drive. Just a whole bunch of memories, essentially. And I was going to do the backup process on this weekend. But the last few nights, I've had some time on my hands, and I just decided to start going through the drive and seeing what I could find in there. I was like, oh, I'm going to, go through and maybe bounce some of these to MP3 and share them with my friends so that they have them now. And so I kind of started that process, got maybe 20 tapes into it or whatever. And then last night happened where it was plugged in to my laptop, and the cord apparently was not as long as I thought it was, because when I went to move, I heard a ta-tunk, and I mean, the drive fell from a table all the way to the floor, crashing, bam. And from that moment on, the drive doesn't work. It has this faint whistling sound. It's like you had to put your ear really close up to it. It's not spinning anymore. So for an hour, I panicked. I was like, what do I do now? Because this data doesn't exist anywhere else, and I don't even know what else is on there. And so the last 12 hours has been a lot of figuring out what my solutions are, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to get this recovered. There's too much important stuff on there. Burke, I saw you mentioned in chat, at least I have the box of tapes, and that's true. I have the box of tapes. I just don't know that I have the time to go through all of this again. And as we know, tapes, they're deteriorating. The tape machines that would play these back, those are deteriorating now. There's components of those that are falling apart. So I'd have to dig out my 4-track out of the hot shed outside, which is probably a horrible place to stash it. But hey, it's the space we got. And see if it even works.
Everybody needs to know, because everybody's asking, have you removed the outer plastic casing just to see that it's not that what happened is that the drive itself became disconnected, and what you're hearing that's inside is just the fan on its own blowing, and the reason the drive is not spinning is because it's not currently connected. So essentially that whistling you're hearing is just the fan by itself.
Yeah, I removed the casing and looked at it closer last night and made sure of that. I wanted to know, and it's not just the whistling. You know how when you on a spinning drive, you can kind of hear the little kind of like a clicking when it's seeking and stuff. Mm-hmm. I get a tiny bit of that, but it's different. I have another drive that's identical to this one, and so I kind of compared the two to kind of hear what one was doing and what the other one is not. And I mean, it's possible that it's something that I'm missing on this, but I'm feeling pretty confident that this drive is kind of hosed in the condition that it is right now.
Yeah, mostly I'm asking these things because I know you'll get email. With
for sure.
Different ideas. And apparently, so did you mention yet what people or companies you've reached out to about getting it fixed? Because apparently there's one where you have to take out a second mortgage if you want to pay them to recover it. Called Drive Savers.
Yeah, so there's Drive Savers, which is, I think, one of the more well-known data recovery outfits for this sort of thing. And they have a space in Nevada, so they're super close.
But they're $1 trillion.
But they're expensive. Right, exactly. I think where I'm at right now, like there's that one. Somebody else tweeted me like a 300. Gosh, I wish I could find it really quick, but it's called $300 data recovery. And I did I was like, okay, that sounds kind of shady. $300datarecovery.com. But it turns out, they're based in LA, so they're in California. And a lot of the reviews that I've looked up for them say that they're reputable. I don't know if y'all know, send me an email, jason@twit.tv. But I think where I'm at right now is I got to get some quotes, because I do believe that I'm willing to spend the money to recover this drive. I think at the end of the day, what really sucks about this situation is that everyone that's listening could probably identify with the fact that we think there's this thing we need to do, especially when it comes to backup. There's this thing that we need to do, and we keep putting it off for whatever dumb reason. And the second something like this happens, like literally the second it happens, you realize that on the other side of that accident, you had everything you needed for free. And now you're on the other side of it suddenly. And in order to get what you had for free, you now have to spend a lot of money to get there. And that's that's on the hope that you can actually recover everything that's there. Save yourself the headache. Just do it now. Like I so wish I could go back in time and just have done this sooner. But these are the lessons, so many people have learned this lesson the hard way, and I'm right there with them. It sucks, but it is what it is. I'll just get some quotes and see if I can get it restored. And I'm sure I'll talk about it again once I figure out the solution. Have you ever had any near accidents or data loss in this vein?
I have had what I thought was going to be data loss. And then for me, it was just a matter of getting a new enclosure and installing the hard drive in the new enclosure. So I've lucked out in that way where it's never been a full-on issue that it seems like the drive isn't working. And then family members have had issues of forgetting passwords that led to them losing data, which is always a huge bummer. And one of those, again, I think, what you kind of talked about, what we are all talking about here, the frustration comes not from the thing itself happening, but of knowing that there was a way to prevent it.
Yes.
And
the regret,
feeling like the regret, exactly. Feeling like you didn't do what you should have done. But
no question.
I say with that is that we should all extend ourselves a certain level of grace, because
Thank you, Mikah.
As much as it is a bummer, and you have some potential solutions, and it does suck, but there's nothing that can be changed now, and the way it happened the way that it happened, and so it is. But and going forward, like you said, you're trying to make sure that the next time this comes up, you do it sooner rather than later. So I hope
I'm thinking
that
of
you
the other
don't end up
drives
having to spend $1 trillion. Exactly. Right. I'm looking around too going, okay, let's upgrade that. Let's update. Back up that one. Yeah. But now, what was it? Jammer B mentioned Sync thing, SYNC thing. That was a great backup tool that he uses.
For the NAS specifically. And that's definitely something that I'm gonna look into. Jammer B has mentioned this to me before, and I did the thing of I should totally do that, and then put it off. Now I'm wishing I hadn't, but at the end of the day, actually, I mean, as doom and gloom as it sounds, I am hopeful that this can be recovered. I'm not in the mind space of oh my goodness, it's lost forever. I do think that there is a way to get back to this. And then I find myself a little conflicted, actually, because then I'm also all right, so if it is $1,000, let's just say it's $1,000. Is the information on there that I can only remember so much of really that important? Is it really that important for me? Some of these cassettes that I have here are from me in junior high, 7th grade, sitting out in the camper in our driveway with my best friend, just making total idiots of ourselves, like, eating sugar and laughing and being total dorks. And like, is there really a time in my life where I'm going to sit down and listen to 45 minutes of that? Probably not. But I'm an archivist. Like I have all this stuff. I'd rather have it preserved than not. Like it would. I don't know that I can ever throw this box away. You know what I mean?
Right,
I don't know that it's possible for me to decide, all right, I'm throwing this box away. Most of this stuff really doesn't matter much. And I also don't know that there's really anyone outside of my kids for maybe a small moment, maybe like a half an hour of their lives that would be at all interested in listening to any of this. So I had to figure out that. What is it really value?
Yeah.
Like, what is the value to me?
Yeah.
That's
hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, because digital clutter, physical clutter, and I've got so much stuff on my network attached storage, and I constantly think about going through it and removing stuff that I really don't need anymore, or that ends up being like duplicates. And I never get around to it because it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to take that time to do it. And I've got the space right now, but why is it there? Because I'm not using it. I'm not making use of it. There's not come a day where I've gone in and make use of it. And I think we all have that fear that there will come a day where we're like, oh man,
there will come a day.
There will come a day whenever you want that file for whatever reason. And then you
totally
kick yourself for not having just saved it. So yeah, over time, like they better keep inventing new types of new bigger types of storage, because for kids born now, they will have a digital file collection that starts from the time they're born till the time they die. And as medical science improves too, they're living longer. So by the time they're dead at 200 years, they better have a petazaptabyte of storage space. You know what I mean?
and those old file formats better still be compatible with whatever we're at, down the line too. It's this whole thing is so complex. Anyways, there we go. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll keep you posted. Thank you for the reminder for us to all be gentle with ourselves when something like this happens. Because I think that makes it easier for me to be like, at the end of the day, if it is lost, like the reality is there's a lot on there that I don't remember what's on there, and that could be a benefit, right? Like I won't miss what I can't remember. So there we go. All right, we've reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Thank you for our therapy session here the last 15 minutes. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday, twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe in audio and video formats.
If you want all of our shows ad-free, well, you should check out Club TWiT, because for $7 a month, you can get every TWiT show with no ads. You also get exclusive access to the TWiT Plus bonus feed that has content you won't find anywhere else. That's pre-show, post-show content, sometimes content in between. Super fun stuff there. And my favorite feature, which is access to the members-only Discord server, where you can chat with us hosts during the show, after the show, and between the show. We've got some very active TWiT folks here who are regularly in the chat. Plus, coming up on, actually, I believe it's tomorrow. Coming up soon. Okay, thank you. Tomorrow is a fireside chat with Security Now's Steve Gibson, which is going to be super awesome. Our community manager, Ant Pruitt, has put that together. So even if you just want it for a month, so you can check out Steve Gibson's fireside chat, $7 a month gets you access to that. All you have to do is head to twit.tv/club TWiT to check it out. By the way, if you are an Apple Podcasts subscriber and you would, or I guess I should say follower, because that's the new thing that they call it, you should check out our new subscriptions. You can actually, if you just want to support a show directly, we heard some folks say, hey, I don't really want to pay the $7 a month. I don't listen to all the shows, etc. But I would like to have my show, whatever show it is that you listen to, ad-free. Well, for $2.99, you can subscribe to the audio version of any of the TWiT shows. And for $2.99 a month, that show will be an ad-free audio version of the show. So again, support us directly. Either of those ways, you get a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart. You're also helping all of us, and it's fantastic. If you would like to follow me on social media, I am at Mikah Sargent at pretty much every site, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I exist online. I just paid $40 to renew that website this morning, so please head there. I did not remember that renewal being so expensive. Apparently, .coffee top level domains are very expensive. And you should also check out my shows. I've got Smart Tech Today later today, and then I record on Tuesdays, iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard. This past Tuesday, we had a great show talking about new Safari extensions for iOS. This coming week, we're going to be talking all things accessories for your iPhone, for your iPad. So if you want some new ideas for cases to get, or ways to store your devices, or ways to charge your devices, etc., we're going to have a huge accessory episode I'm looking forward to. Jason Howell, what about you?
Nice. I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Go ahead and tweet me what you think I should do. And I'm already actually getting emails from folks. So thank you. Everybody's pitching in. I appreciate it. Twit.tv/AAA for All About Android. We're having a lot of fun over there. So go check that out. And that's really about it. Big thanks to everybody who help us do this show each and every week. John Ashley, Burke, Patrick for giving me some pointers, Anthony. There's so many people at TWiT that are pitching in on the show and on my conundrum. So appreciate you all. And thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So you got yourself the brand new latest and greatest iPhone or Samsung smartphone because you heard about all of the beautiful photography those things can create. But for some reason, you're just not quite getting it done when you try to make your photos. Or you got yourself a brand new camera because you were interested in getting started in photography, but your little new inexpensive camera still isn't quite cutting it. Well, you need to check out my show, Hands-on Photography, here on TWiT. I'm going to show you how to be a better photographer and a better post-processor, and quite frankly, just help you get the most out of that new camera that's either on your phone or the brand new one that you just got for your birthday or gifts or what have you. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So head on over to twit.tv/hop. That's twit.tv/HOP and subscribe today.